connection to that greater spiral fractality that we see happening with a lot of these geometric shapes. So it's hands creating hands, really. That's what humans are doing. This is how we interact with our environment. This is the idea of us being able to change our situation, us being able to build in a situation. These are all very important when it comes to magic. And so one of the hands that I like to think about a lot is the hand of Sabazios. This thing has got so many symbols packed into it. Just absolutely amazing. You've got the cave where Zeus was nursed back to health down on the wrist. You've got, it looks like a pan right there in the middle where the palm is. You've got a pine cone on the thumb. You've got a snake that wraps around the whole thing and then comes up between the two fingers. And as you can tell, the pose that it is in all the pictures of Jesus Christ, as well as the saints, pointing up towards heaven, pointing down towards hell. This mysterious figurine was most likely put on top of a pole so that everybody could see it. Right? This is like the idol's idol. It's got all of these different mythologies all pressed together into one single figure. And this was the hand of Sabazios. Now, Sabazios is an interesting god because it comes through this Thracian line. Sabazios was always depicted as a young, sort of strapping man on a horse with a spear. And he was the son of either Zeus and Persephone, which was sort of a later interpretation, or Cybele through herself, right? So Cybele is kind of like this virgin priestess. So he was either self-born through Cybele, or he was kind of born through Zeus and Persephone, the goddess of the underworld. And that union of Zeus and Persephone is pretty interesting too, because this really goes into Dionysus. Right? So Dionysus's original form is this character called Zagreus. Zagreus is a god that was supposed to be formed between either Zeus and Persephone or Hades and Persephone. And there's kind of a disagreement there. Some people say that he's from Olympus. Some people say that he was born in the underworld. But this Zagreus character would then be ripped apart by the Titans. And this is one of the first retellings of how mankind came into existence. Because what we're said to be is we're said to be gross material or Titan flesh with divine spark within us. So as the Titans consumed the body and blood of this character, Zagreus, it put the spirit into mankind, into this gross material flesh. Does that sound familiar? Well, this idea of Zagreus moves on after he's chewed up. His heart is then placed into the thigh of Zeus. And Zeus then bursts out with this new character called Dionysus. And this is the Dionysian cycle in the first part of Dionysus' existence. And it's said that this Dionysian character is like the Son of God and the ultimate truth or the ultimate God of this world. And so there's a lot of crossover between these Thracian mysteries and Dionysus and Jesus, for that matter. So as you see on that thumb, you can see the pine cone. Well, Dionysus carried a pine cone on his walking stick, and this is out in front of the Vatican today. We've got that massive pine cone still in existence, still sort of keeping that Dionysian feel to the Vatican, which is almost like a continuation of these Thracian mysteries. Through Cybele and all the rest of it, they kind of kept this character. They kind of kept it alive. So this all comes through the hand symbol. Now, one of the things that I found interesting about this hand symbol as well is the Idaean dactyls. The Idaean dactyls were like these gods of sport, right? The dactyls of Mount Ida in Crete. Mount Ida is one of the holiest mountains for all of Greece. Invented the art of working metals into usable shapes with fire. So this is one of the gods. This would be let me see here. It's not letting me scroll. Anyways, So Hephaestus is one of these Idaean dactyls, right? And then the Corybantes are also integrated with that too. And the dactyli are like the 5 fingers of the gods. Heracles is also one of these 5 fingers and instigated the Olympic Games. So as you know, in ancient Greece, they love to have these naked Olympic sports. And all of that was actually in service to these Idaean dactyls, right? These are like the highest competitive characters within their pantheon. So anytime they would win a battle, they'd be like, all right, everybody strip naked, we're having the Olympics, we're having games, right? Because this was sort of in service to their gods. As they were expending their energy and showing who was the best out of everybody gathered, they were also establishing a pecking order that was sort of granted to them by the gods. So their hyper-competitiveness on the sport field also translated into hyper-competitiveness on the battlefield. So all of these sports have to do with the will of the gods as it's coming through them. And you can see over and over again, these sports sort of take the attention of the population almost as if it's a religious ritual. And you find all the religious symbolism within sport all having to do with, who wins and who loses in these symbolic fights, proving who's the top of the heap. And if you think about the hands and what they're capable of producing and how related it is to God in this sense, you can kind of see why there's kind of a reverence paid at these different sporting events, how there's kind of an alternate identity created. And the entertainment of it almost brands different areas or parts of the country and sort of gives them a new meaning as well. I mean, look at the mascots of these different sporting teams. It changes the colors of different regions. And these colors have a huge impact on the psychology of the people experiencing that kind of situation. So you can almost use these as a magical religious symbol to influence the population through sport. And that's my presentation on the hand symbolism, at least coming through Greece.
I love the pine cone element to this, and I might be jumping ahead here, but I'm always down to learn more about why the ancients were depicted holding the pine cone. But I'll say this, that you brought up Persephone, it does remind me of her in the sense that she was often depicted holding a pomegranate, which is like a symbol for life, death, rebirth, and divinity. And I think that's...
wrote a book using the pomegranates in the name. So
Yeah.
it is used for...
Yeah, the orchard of pomegranates, sorry.
And the whole, then I'll cap it off with this, the whole rebirth divinity thing, I find super interesting because I think a lot of these kings, these old ancient kings, like Ashurbanipal or Nebuchadnezzar even, were trying to alchemically transmute and achieve some sort of a rebirth that would give way to divinity. They were trying to deify, it seems. But it all goes back to the hand symbolism.
Tim, think about where all the Apostle Paul sent his letters up in Turkey, right? Those are all the Thracian homelands, right? So those are the same kinds of crossover there with this dying and resurrecting Savior, and that's where he's sending his letters to.
Yeah. Heavy on the Greek.
If I could kind of expand upon the thumb.
So I was going to ask you about that specifically.
Yeah, Nick and I have had this discussion, which is interesting because you've said something about, your rituals as well. Not yours specifically, but the rituals that you participated. So there is, and Jen, please, this is kind of, I know you have a little bit of knowledge on this too, in terms of I believe the body ley lines or reflexology, they believe that the thumb is connected to the pineal gland. Well, okay, so the concept is that there are specific points on the hands and feet that corresponds with the organs of the body. And the way that it was told to me whenever I was doing acupuncture was that when you are developing in the fetus, you're developing in a fetal position. So the cells that are used to form the hands or the back of the hand or whatever, is closely related to like your chest area, right? Because you kind of develop like this, so it's almost aligned, and or they can feel each other because they almost come from the same area. Whenever during fetal development, please, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong. But so with that in mind, I believe there is, I think it's reflexology, and I want to say this acupuncture too, but they believe that there is points on the tip of the thumb that correspond to the pineal gland, and that if you massage the tip of the thumb, it's believed to stimulate the pineal gland, not only in awakening or awareness, but also encourage melatonin production. So I think when you go like to these alternative medicine type institutions, that they do that in order to help like with improving sleep or promote relaxation and stuff like that. So I do know that there is that.
No, that was great, Lisa. So I'll answer in two ways. One is a tantric way, but it ties in with the yogic way. So the later yogis weren't tantric, but they kind of had an idea of what that was, like magic, really. And so they were writing their like treatises on Hatha Yoga, their sutras. And so they kind of reformulated because they didn't have all the clues or the keys, maybe you could say. So they had to sort of reformulate their broken knowledge of the tantric ideas. So there's different ways that you can actually assign in tantra. For each finger is actually related to an element, and there are obviously 5 elements in tantra. The thumb is often associated with akasha or the mind, but it can also be like the akashic records, obviously. So something like what you're saying, stimulating the memory, stimulating the mind, stimulating the pineal gland. They have like spiritual experiences. So what mudras really are, like this is really great, Helis, thanks for bringing that up, is that mudras really are about the connections between the fingers. You're actually doing a very subtle tantric, with this called tantric dancing actually, and you're subtly touching the fingers to each other in the specific movements. But what you're actually doing is you're doing elemental invocations, like very Yade Bave actually. So yeah, that's basically what it is, and that's even how you would do a ritual sadhana, is that you would change your mudras depending on the specific timing or grammar within that specific sadhana. So you would be activating the different elemental configurations, you could even say. And you'd always do air last. So that's interesting because sometimes earth is given to the pinky and sometimes air is given to the pinky. But it does actually matter. So what I'm saying is the way you formulate it actually changes. So if someone does it one way, it's not going to work for someone else who thinks of it in a totally different way, in another way. Because it really matters like your starting point.
Jen, I got one for you. So you know who else was a Thracian? You got it?
No.
Pythagoras.
Oh,
Because you keep all the numbers you need right here.
it's true. Yeah, it's time. Oh, I can use your feet. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. For sure.
Pythagoras was so huge on that. I mean, you've got the idea of number all embodied inside of these hands, you know, as your very first starting point within the whole world of numbers. And you've got the perfect symbol for base 10, you know, right there on both sides of your body.
10 in Masonry means perfection, or at least one of them, one of the theories or ideas for number 10.
I think zero is a very profound concept. I'm sure Lisa has also thoughts on this, but I find zero to be a very profound concept, and I actually think it was a very innovative, magical idea. I know a lot of people I just did an episode on the value of number 9 with someone who's like, you know, in the order of trapezoids. But for me, I'm just saying for me, I prefer a base 10. I think that there's something more interesting and like more, it seems to be more progressive. I'm not using that word politically, but I'm just saying it's like forward thinking magic. It's not backwards looking. That's just my perception, but maybe that's wrong. But
Well, it could have to do with how they're associated, right? So the base 6s and all the rest of these other systems might have other focuses that they put into their numbering system as part of a body heuristic, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, that's a possibility.
Speaking about the numbers here, you know, the bottom of a pine cone, at least some of the ones I've seen, has a Fibonacci sequence. So if you think about it, if it also represents the third eye or the pineal gland, you've got the third eye wrapped up in that, I would, wager. But it's like the third eye meets the Fibonacci sequence, which is like the golden ratio with the numbers, like higher math, higher science. So it's almost like if you see somebody holding that and you're mixing these two concepts of like third eye and higher math found in nature, it's almost symbolic of the human being like receiving gnosis or receiving knowledge. Like with this picture you had up, there's a pine cone at the person's fingertips. To me, this is symbolic of, I don't know, receiving higher knowledge, perhaps.
I just want to respond really quick, Tim. So I think that's super profound what you said, and I actually think this goes back to the episode I just did with Nick and Matt. So we were talking about Binah. Binah is that higher math, that kind of higher intellectual thinking, exactly what you're talking about, and that perceptual element, that element that's in perception to that higher knowledge is Hesed. So it's that Saturn-Jupiter connection. That's kind of what makes the world real. It's like we see it, we know it, exactly what you said, higher knowledge, and we understand it. All those three things at the same time. Sorry, I had to do Kabbalah, Nick. I apologize.
You're good. No, you're good. Thanks.
I want to build upon what Jen said because of the Kabbalah and made me think of numbers. One of the things with the thumb still staying around the thumb is that the thumb itself is controlled by 9 muscles. But let me rephrase that. So there are no, contrary to popular belief, there are no muscles in your fingers. It's only tendons and ligaments, right? And they're connected to muscles, and that's kind of how it works. And it works like in a rope pulley type system. But with the thumb, the thumb itself is controlled by 9 muscles, and it has 3 major nerves. So you have the number 93. And then there are, I believe, 6 potential directions or movements that the thumb can make at the base joint. So going back to what you were talking about, Jen, you have this 369 vortex math. You have any kind of, they call it the golden ratio, and not 369 is the golden ratio, but you have all of these types of what we've heard, these things over and over in secret societies or occult practices, these numbers or these orientations happening all again within the thumb. So thought I'd throw that in there as well.
That's really great, Lisa. Like 369, like just think about in Kabbalah. It's Binah, Tiferet, and Yesod. And like I always tease Nick about this because he always says he used to listen to David Icke back in the day, and David Icke talks about the Saturn Moon matrix, right? Well, that is, that he's talking about something fundamentally real in Kabbalah. Like that is an important Kabbalistic lesson, is that everything is formed in your mind. So when he's saying it's like a matrix that you're trapped in it, he's not actually talking about like there's an external matrix. He's talking about like your kind of consciousness matrix. Like you're saying you're trapped, and that's exactly what those numbers are, because 6 is really the higher apotheosis of all of those things in synthesis. So very profound. Thank you, Lisa.
No. Thank you, Jen. And then if we ever get to do the Gnostic Mass,
You have to.
that one of the things with the pineal, and Jen, you kind of jog my memory on this, with the pineal, you can charge your pineal by, I think it's a full moon facing north. Yeah. So again, going back to
North
the whole
Pole?
pineal.
Facing the North Pole on a full moon facing the North Pole on a full moon charges your pineal gland, because that totally makes sense.
So that's one of the, I guess, theories out there that potentially you could charge your pineal during a full moon facing north. I don't know when, I don't know at what point. That's all I just remember from reading. But, yeah. So going back to the whole lunar thing of what Jim was saying with Kabbalah.
I think Crowley actually suggested to look at the moon as well. Sure.
Yeah, I got it from. You told me that.
Yeah. One thing
You told me that you face north at midnight. And I was like, well, that's interesting because I do know that the pineal is receptive to moonlight frequency, electromagnetic frequency from the moon. And you can potentially charge it because it can sense it at midnight.
Yes.
The moon facing north. So,
Yeah,
Sorry, I just want to. Sorry.
Well, you go, because I'm going to have a bunch I want to say.
Okay, I'm just gonna be really quick. I just want to say to jump off Lisa's point is that that's a really interesting thing that you said about the apex of the moon at midnight, because that is actually in tantric astrology. That is what is considered as the apex. The true north at midnight is the moon, whereas at noon in tantric astrology, I'm not saying this is real, but I'm just saying in tantric astrology, it's Venus. So very interesting, kind of feminine. Both have feminine, specifically feminine qualities.
See, even at noon, when you do, go back to Resh, that is something I do want to, I think, eventually cover. And I think, from what Lisa's saying and the other stuff, the other prayers, I do think it's to charge a pineal thing for sure. But even when you face at noon, when you're facing and you're doing the prayer, you're still even actually including a chick at that time. You're praying to Hathor. Now I know that's like, to me, I used to sometimes use Hathor. And that's not anyway, even though. But I found it interesting how you said a female, or whatever, Venus. And again, it's associated, this prayer is associated with the female during the day. So,
and
What's the
you do charge it at midday too. Sorry, Tim. At midday, at noon, you do charge a pineal as well. Because at noon, depending where you are on the surface of the earth, you're receiving all of the light in its appropriate ratios of the electromagnetic spectrum. So,
Yeah, you've got 12 o'clock noon, and then you've got the 12 phases of the moon. I'm just thinking about the numbers here, and the golden ratio is like 1.6 something, so there's a 6 in there if you're thinking about 369.
1618 or something like that.
Yeah, and if you add the 1 and the 8, you get the 9. So technically it has a 6 and 9 in there. But I was going to ask, what's the association with Venus? Because was there an association with Venus that was mentioned?
Oh no,
maybe
Jen said something about feminine, and that reminded me of the prayer at 12 o'clock. Was also a feminine deity that you pray to. Maybe you didn't say Venus. I fucked that up.
Well,
No, I did say Venus. Sorry. Venus is at the apex of the north. It's true north at noon. Just at that point in the sky. This is one idea.
and it was the first star that you can see in the morning, right?
It's the morning star.
It can be the rising and falling star. This is really interesting in tantric astrology, actually. Is that both Mars and Venus can be the rising and falling star, depending, or the morning and evening star. They switch.
Okay. And those 2 points on the earth is what is the switch, like literally, like light switch, to turn on and off your pineal gland. Is the crepuscular times or the dawn, dusk, whatever. So.
Yeah, I see this as being saturated with divine feminine. If we're talking about Hathor and if we're talking about Venus, and even the Bible mentions the morning star in association with Venus. And if you go further into that, I would suggest that it's probably associated with Inanna, Astarte, Ishtar.
And also, Jesus was called Son of the Morning. Jesus was called Son of the Morning as well.
Jesus was the child of the North Star, though, really.
Depending on what translation you want to use, they'll call him the morning star.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it has to do with different parts of the year. And, we see that again with Venus, which the morning star part of the year is the spring. And then for the summer, it goes away. And then like fall, winter, it's in the evening part of the sky. So there is this dichotomy between when it shows up during the year. So I think a lot of that has to do with the calendar.
One thing I did want to mention too, this wasn't like I said I was going to talk for a little bit, is because the OTO, when I did my second degree initiation, you guys got me thinking with that whole thumb thing. Let me just go back a little bit. There has been times during the initiations where, like, I'll just use this as an example. I'm already saying stuff I'm not supposed to. They'll take a sword and not hit you hard, but they'll tap your waist. And they tell you at some point, after you do the initiation, sometimes like a few weeks, maybe a month later, they'll have a class. And anybody who's ever done that degree can come in and take the class, and they'll kind of go over it a little bit. And normally they'll have like people that just did that initiation kind of come in and say some stuff. And they had said that when they do that sword thing, it was to activate that chakra down there. Now, during the second degree, there's at one point they give you this thing. It's a big piece of wood. It has a screw on the top of it. And they specifically tell you to put it on your thumb. Screw it down until you can't, until you can, whatever, until I guess you can bear it anymore. I mean, I already, some reading stuff I wasn't supposed to read, I already knew what was going to happen. So, I mean, I just did it. And I said, okay, that's it. Whatever. But I am like, you're starting to wonder now when they said that they specifically will tap you places or do things to activate chakras, was that whole thing to do with the whole thumb shit? Were they putting the screw, were you screwing that shit down yourself? I don't know. It made me think about that when we were talking about the thumb and the pinnacle connection.
Have you ever heard of the torture technique, the thumb screws? Right, so it was like a torture technique. They would put you in the thumb screws, which was like this thing that they would put down on top of the cuticle. And as they're cranking it down, they want you to confess to certain crimes or whatever. But if they've got you doing that during an initiation, you're putting the thumb screws to yourself.
Yeah, you know what this is slick shit that they say. This is one of the reasons why I was like, what's going on in this place? They lift it up. They show you it's like a stick and it has a screw at the top. Then when they show you the bottom of it, it was like hollowed out. And they were like, now if you maybe noticed everything. Basically, what they're getting at is that not everything may be as it seems. That was the whole lesson to learn from that. Because if I would have looked around and saw everything, I would have realized I could have just stuck the whole fucking thing on me and wouldn't have had to turn the screw. Some shit like that. So like it was even weird like that lesson. Because right before that, I had people push me into a pool and they're telling me don't trust my brothers and sisters and siblings. And now you're telling me not everything not everything is as it seems. What the fuck are you telling me now? What's going on here?
It's like they're planting paranoia.
No, it's like, well, technically, if it's the second degree, that's my third time. And the other two initiations before, they both told me you can't trust anybody in their own way. So I'm like, is this the 3 times? So you told me 3 times after this, you're a fucking idiot. What else? Could be something like that. I don't get it. But yeah, I just wanted to toss that in there about that the pine cone. Again, I know I said it 2 or 3 times already, but it was just weird to me thinking about put that pine cone there and possibly connected to your pineal gland. There's a lot of stuff I think Crowley does that shows pineal gland.
Well, if you think about it from the Greek perspective, you've got the idea of Prometheus and this thing that made us uniquely human. And so the thumb is one of these things that make us uniquely human as opposed to one of the other animals. It sticks out. It does a lot of stuff that we tell it to. All these other paws and stuff, they can't, really operate the thumb. So, it's one of these uniquely human traits in the hand that I think they were trying to glorify. It's like this is the thing that gets us close to God is because this makes us different from everything else.
To build upon that, I will say the opposable thumbs of which raccoons didn't have them, but that's neither here or squirrels. Neither here nor there. But one of the unique things with thumbs is that only humans and primates can touch the thumb to the other fingers. So that's definitely a unique characteristic within the hand, thumb, finger, I guess, situation. But the one of the things that I kind of wanted to insert, just kind of tangent, the amount of population that's left-handed versus right-handed, I always found that to be really odd. That it's like 10% of the population, the entire population is left-handed. Well, you're told kind of or guided to be right-handed in elementary. I remember that, but for the most part, I believe it's only a 10% percentage of the human population that is left-handed, and then like even less than that, like it's 1% that's ambidextrous. I thought that was something, like you have it in multiples of 10. So
Well, sort of to riff off your point, Lisa, since Nick brought up the story headless, I'm just going to go really quick. This is cinquefoil, so I thought you would like this, Lisa, simply because this is the one thing I actually contributed to Occult Research in written form is the herb correspondences. So this is a really important magical herb in both Europe and North America, for both indigenous people and Europeans. And so its name in French actually means the five-fingered hand, cinquefoil. It represents the hand of Mary. So actually, it's also an idea in Spiritism, which I believe also comes from this. And it's the hand of the saints. And you'll see this a lot of Puerto Rican, kind of like Sanse. There's a hand, and it will have the five Orisha or the five saints. But sometimes it's different. It's not always, sometimes people pray, like use that candle or whatever, and they're not. It's not Orisha, it's saints. But some people, that is. So, but basically it's that there are 5 roads for every person when they're born. And so they say you can't open all 5 roads in one lifetime. That's something I've heard people say. But this plant is the divine kind of savioress hand of Mary plant. So it opens all 5 roads for you. So and that's exactly what it's used for. It's used for luck, love, job, money, and success, just general success. So it's a really great thing. You'll see in a lot of older recipes for Van oil.
and it reminds me
Shout out
of
to the what we
the
do.
5-petaled flower that was found imprinted on the Lady Gray in Mexico, and it's very symbolic to the Mexica Aztec people as well. So it's interesting that you bring that up because it's the 5 all over again. But yeah,
This is a rose too. It's a lesser rose. It's a potentilla. So it means, even the name means potency or potential.
mm-hmm.
Like you do now.
Yeah, that's
That'd be
very
fucking
interesting. Wow.
All right. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, I think about like sacred geometry as well, with some of the stuff we've talked about today, like which was big in Egypt. And I mention that because Osiris was often depicted holding a
Just getting
staff
ready.
with
Go.
the pine cone
So,
on. So I
yeah.
wonder if all this
Peace.
is symbolic
Peace to
of
the
maybe
people,
an early form
as
of
Fairgrove
masonry
would say back in
in
the day.
building pyramids and
Peace
building
to all that
temples in
read
Egypt.
this.
So it'd be like sacred geometry
peace
in
to all,
conjunction
peace
with
to all
gnosis,
that hear
and
this.
basically a way of putting
Peace to the people.
the knowledge to
Yeah,
use.
yeah. Oi, oi, oi.
And
Yeah.
I
Oi,
don't know
oi.
that masonry goes back to ancient Egypt, but some form of it might.
It does, and you're right. I think a lot of it goes back to masonry. Like I said, I just finished up my Anunnaki presentation, or my PowerPoint presentation. A lot of people know who the Sumerians are, and when I was doing my research on them, a lot of people would say that they're known as the black-headed people, right? Or they're known as mankind, or human, or something that identifies a species. But then I read from somebody who is a 33rd degree Mason, and I can't remember exactly which book it is. I have to go look and see which one it is. I know which I know what author it's from. I just don't know which book it is actually from. And he was saying that they're also known as brothers. Well, Masons identify each other as brothers, or at least every time I've come in contact with them, that word always seems to pop up. But they were known as brothers. Another good example of that is a lot of people know that Enki and Enlil, that they were brothers, right? But there are texts out there, which I actually have in my presentation, that one could be the father and one could be the son. Sometimes it flip-flops, which one was the father and son. So the brothers part stuck out to me because those were a group of individuals that was in the elite, right? They were higher class than everybody else. And at a time, that's what Masons, some of them probably still think as themselves as today. So it's just amazing that, the symbolism, and it doesn't just go back to the ancient Egyptians. A lot of the symbolism you can find in the Dogon tribe. And I actually had a podcast discussion with one of the authors
Like
Larry
AVB
Scranton
in my speech.
on his book about it. And he talks about symbolism. So yeah, it's definitely something in there. You know, Egypt and Mesopotamia and all that, they have a link between each other. Even Mesoamerica has a link.
Hey, what about the Masonic handshakes?
Yeah.
It's a
Who gives a
symbolism
fuck, man?
smorgasbord, you know? They've got all these different parts of the hand that they're touching for different types of Masonic handshakes.
Too hurt.
That's very mystical.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, when I read about them, it's more like you can't go to the next degree without perfecting the degree that you're in now. So how can you move? How can you get promoted if you're not good at your job that you're at right now, right? Why would you expect a promotion? And they stick very strong to those rules, or at least from what I've read. I had books from Godfrey Higgins and, you know, Albert Pike, and then Godfrey Higgins is actually my favorite historian / author. And then you have Albert Churchward, I think that's how you say his last name. You know, he talks about the symbolism. So there is definitely some, you know, when you see symbolism, you can see that there's a certain language and meaning towards behind it. That symbol that you have right now means only one thing to a certain group of individuals, and everybody sees that, will understand that. It's the same thing like when I say with emojis and stuff like that, with pictographic scripts of today. You know, you can have a whole sentence on just a pictographic script. It's just the people that are having that conversation, they need to have enough knowledge on their own on what each pictograph means. And hand symbolism is the same thing with, like, I don't know if it was before we started going live or after, while we was live, but somebody was mentioning about, you know, some of the gangs and stuff like that. They can have a whole discussion with their hands, you know, a whole discussion. You know exactly what to do. And so, you know, it's a very easy way to communicate. I think when we started using words, everybody tried to use their words to mean whatever narrative they're trying to share later on.
I got one.
The AVB and
Go
the
ahead.
backing into the
Just
lead
really quick,
as you
I'm
mix
gonna,
it
I'm
up.
gonna take one stab again at the dead horse on the pine cone. The pine cone, the ones that we do see, or the ones that are more prominent, are the female, because pine trees produce female and male pine cones. The male ones you rarely do see. They're not showy. They mainly produce pollen. Jen, please step in if I'm wrong. But the bigger
No, this
ones,
is
the
not-
ones you see on the floor, whatever, the ones that people hold up, that's the female one. That's it.
Oh, well, that's perfect, because you reminded me of something that I meant to say earlier. The Romans associated the pine cone with Venus, and so with the goddess Venus. So it makes me wonder, when you see that big bronze or whatever it is, that big pine cone at the Vatican, if that was them sort of quietly inducting goddess worship into the facility and the grounds of the Vatican itself. And if you look back at like the Etruscans, because the Etruscans built Rome, they actually had a goddess named Vatica. And
Okay,
so, go ahead, Jim.
sorry, Tim. No. I apologize. I shouldn't have jumped in, but you know, you were saying something and I got excited. So I just want to change the angle for you. I want to say, you could say, I accept that. I accept that it could be a divine feminine, like encapsulation, like a crystalline matrix, you could say. That's very feminine, divine force. But I also think that it could just be adopting like something that's quote unquote, I'm not a perennialist, but I'm going to use the word perennially true. So it could be just something that appears magical experience. And obviously there are people who attribute both masculine and feminine qualities to often the same things. So when you're looking at comparative mythology, especially from like east to west, as something that I often do, you see that there are different, very different ideas of the same thing, but then there is a kind of underlying truth to both of them. They can reason through, but it might be like a very different at face value understanding of it. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I agree. I totally accept that.
Well, I'll say this because I might be wrong. I was just throwing it out there as a possibility because of the just because of some of the connections that I'm looking at here with like, again, I'm just saying this might be the case. I'm not saying it is the case, but like when I see that the Roman Empire seemed to kind of dissolve and morph into the Vatican, and there's, I'm assuming that maybe some of that goddess worship was still there, and maybe it got turned into something else, or masquerades as something else. But again, I'm not sure. But I do think that it's interesting that the Etruscans have the goddess Vatica.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the closest link between like the Roman religion and the Vatican is the Pantheon of Saints, like they have in France, like the Pantheon. They have, it's like people who were like born in like 1905. They have like enshrined there that they pray to. They have like actually official national prayers. So I think that that is very much like an encapsulation of that kind of like late Empire Roman religion, which people often mistake for being very polytheistic. It was actually very much about the imperial cult of ancestors. So I think that's very interesting. Of course, there are different goddesses and god names, and people, encoding things in those within those names and those like kinds of images. This is a great one. This is Shiva on top of the mountain, on top of the world mountain, you could say. Yeah, exactly. Like when Nick just showed, he's doing the Abhaya Mudra. So this is the gesture of fearlessness. So you're going to ask, why is this calm, chill, dope smoking guy, why is he offering you the gesture of fearlessness? Because once you wake him up, he becomes Vairava. He becomes very ferocious, and he turns almost black, blue-black. And he has like fangs, and the carnal ground arises above him. So you have to, but that's also your own consciousness, your own mind. So when your mind wakes up, so you have to, that's why he offers the gesture of fearlessness. So you can first enter the garden or the mountain or the carnal ground or wherever he is, and you can bypass him, and you can see him as just his placid face is not a mask, but it's just one of many. That's what I might think of it.
You know,
I really love that.
Go ahead, Evan.
I was gonna say that the skins kind of almost represent a fearlessness to both Dionysus and Pan. Like Pan has these fur patterns in his legs that are kind of like the stars, and so that's one of the reasons why he was referred to as sort of like this cosmic deity, is because he had all of the stars in his pelt. And so that kind of goes into this Dionysian character that, you also have the pine cone associated with Shiva. So there's a real crossover between Dionysus, Shiva, and all these different versions that they had, like Attis worship, going on in that Thracian region of Anatolia.
There's a clear link between elements of what you're saying, Solar, and like the Alcon Huns and their journey from more of that southern Turkey into northern into the Himalayas. Excuse me, I couldn't think of it right away, but they went into the Himalayas, and that's really where Tantra started. The Bhairava Tantras were the first. But it's really important to note that this image of Shiva is in no way tantric. He's not suggesting anything tantric. There's nothing tantric associated with his worship in general, and most Indians would not understand this image in a even remotely tantric way. I obviously gave it a little flavor, but this is a very normative, very orthodox kind of image. So he's at sleeping consciousness. That's how a normative quote-unquote Hindu would understand this. He's at sleeping consciousness, and the water is flowing down, but that's the water from heaven. So he's really the god of secret knowledge. If you want like the secret idea of Shiva, he's the god of secret knowledge. So even the moon he wears, it's not really a moon. Most normative Hindus would understand this to be a moon. It's actually the eclipse. And it depends on what side it even is on his hair. It actually is, you can astrotheologically sort of align it to the Nitya cycle, which is like a 16 sort of, I think, night moon cycle. There's different numbers for different systems, but it's a very interesting thing. Like you can really change, like what Tim was saying, you can encode a lot of things into iconography, signs and meanings, into answer something that you said, Solar, and then I'll shut up, I promise. But the animal skins have a really interesting meaning. So the leopard skin means he's overcome the sort of demon, you could say, of bliss consciousness. So he doesn't need to always be pleasured to be chill. And if he is sitting on the tiger skin, he's overcome all fear. So he's offering the gesture of fearlessness, but he's also overcome it himself. Sorry, I didn't mean to go for that long. Thanks,
No,
guys.
I just wanted to let you know you're not doing spaces. Solar isn't here. That was Headless. Tim, you're talking to.
Did I say Solar?
Yeah, twice. I thought maybe the
Oh
first
shit,
time.
I'm so sorry. I apologize. I apologize, guys.
It was like
It's late. I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Oh, there was something I wanted to say about this, but I need to release it, so I guess maybe I'll have to leave this for now. I do, one thing I do find interesting with this, does almost remind me of the Hermit card because of the snake in the hand opening again. You know, because that is, I also think that, I mean, the snake I think is, can be used for multiple reasons, obviously. I do think it can also sometimes show like something to do with the pineal gland or your eyeball. I do think sometimes the snake, when I think with the Hermit card, it's more of showing possibly this twisting of the pupil closing, spinal close. And I have said that it does happen, like when that, this really all could be a grasp when you're looking at the snake on the right side. But I've even said that's the pupil out of line that spins closed. Like it's, you know, pinned. And I do see the snakes on the right side of his, well, yeah.
No, you're totally right, Nick. It's so in Tantra, he has actually secret channels inside his body. There's like a trident. Like there's 3 channels that rise up. One is behind that eye that you're talking about. And so you'll see in Tantric iconography, they'll do one eye, the pupil is a sun, and the other eye, the pupil is a crescent moon, like an eclipse. So that's even how it's described. And the dragon of the eclipse, again, to reference the serpent, right? So it all makes sense to what you're saying. It's absolutely not wrong at all.
Jim, I got one for you. John 3:14. Just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up.
Yeah, I
Well-
would say that's. I'll keep this quick, Jen.
No. Please go. Please go.
Well, that seems to be Caduceus symbolism to me. Just saying.
I think that, like on the hand of Sabazios, you've got this snake figure that's always sort of present in with this sort of Dionysian type idea. So you've got so many different snakes that apply into that symbol. They were talking specifically about the one at Delphi, but the idea of the snake being wisdom and treachery, these kind of dualistic kind of symbols are associated with the Bible all over the place, you know?
Yeah, being knowledgeable. That's why Eve ate the fruit. Yeah, that's why I say that too. Like a lot of people say, you know, they correlate, you know, the serpent, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, whatever the case may be. I mean, they throw it all in one category. We know that between us, at least, we know the difference between them. But when it comes up to the snake is always known as someone that's giving knowledge to somebody else. And it seems like that, and what we do with that knowledge determines whether if it was for good or evil. But the point is when you see the snake was always seen as, you know, as someone, you know, trying to give somebody knowledge. I mean, most people are scared of snakes when they see them, but you know, they have that.
The believers in the New Testament, are said that they can now tread upon snakes and scorpions. I think there's a little bit of astrotheology in that too. You've got the symbol of Scorpio in there as well.
That was great, Tyrone and Headless. I have to say, we don't always agree, but honestly, really great points. And what Tyrone said, I think, is really, really profound, because that is exactly what it is. Like Shiva swallowed the poison, the Hal poison, that arose from the second turning of the supernal waters, and so he swallowed that, and he keeps it in his lower body, his stomach. He has to totally focus all his, like, a third eye power, you could say, like Naruto kind So it swirls around in his stomach, and so he keeps that so like his own son figure can emerge. So that's even an idea. So really interesting. Thank you, Tyrone.
Another thing I wanted to mention with this is just to go back to, and I've even wondered if this is even sometimes why it's even shown on like the hermaphrodite or those whatever those alchemical man and woman. The nipple showing. Just to go back to the NOx formula and something that Crowley came up with. You will at one point act like you are Isis breastfeeding Horus, holding Horus and you'll be pinching your nipple. And I'm wondering if the nipple is showing because that does connect to the pineal gland as well. What's weird about that?
But why is the skin blue or bluish?
Okay, you see how his lingam, his brown, that brown pineal gland. I know that's what a headless. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you solar before. I apologize for that. His brown lingam. So there's covered in milk is the idea. So, but it's really supposed to be a black chlorophyte stone. So when you pour the white milk over the black stone, it looks sort of blue. So this is like it's like
What
clear,
about-
like very night sky or very day sky. Excuse me. So like turquoise, it kind of appears turquoise. So he's like turquoise, like the day sky, because he's sleeping.
Okay.
He's drinking that colloidal silver shit.
You never know, right?
Very lunar coded. If you
It's
want to
very
get into
lunar.
that lunar mindset, you got to drink the colloidal silver.
Well, it makes
And,
sense, right?
One other question I had for that
Go for it.
last picture.
Oh, wait. There we go.
There you go.
Well, that's the same god, so that's the same, that's Shiva, and then that's his wife, and she's nursing him. This is right after, in fact, that he drinks the poison, and only her breast milk can save him, can repair the world. So that's how it's described.
And like even on the last one too. I mean, maybe they do it. Jim, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do it on all. Like they have marks where their pineal gland would be. Do they always do that, or?
It's special for Tara because she is the third eye. So the original story is the original goddess of heaven got cut up into 51 pieces, so obviously magic number. And then, so each part of her falls on a specific place, and then a new goddess sort of herself arises. And so Tara arises as part of the third eye. So when Tara is also associated with that Hasidic idea of perception. It's very much her idea. She is the flame of perception. That's even how it's described. But she's also the waters of supernal mercy. So she's actually it's interesting because it's actually both Gabriatic and Hasidic at the same time.
Well, the last two images, I don't know if it's common or not.
Yeah.
The nipple showing, and they had the pineal gland drawn on their forehead. And Lisa, since you're back, could you please explain the connection between the pineal gland?
Yeah, I don't know the exact mechanism off the top of my head, but yes, the pineal gland influences the pituitary for milk letdown, which is prolactin, and then the feedback of oxytocin from the bonding that occurs between the mother and oxytocin helps with the release of prolactin. Prolactin causes milk letdown. And then the reinforced positive feedback with the child latching onto the nipple, and then the oxytocin bonding and all that other stuff. With all that being said, during milk letdown, the milk itself carries vital information that is received in like packages of photons or packages of information that tell the child or tell the infant where it is, what time it is, daylight, moonlight, nighttime, what have you. It starts to program the circadian rhythm of the child itself. If it was not already starting to be programmed within utero, because the child had yet to see light, sunlight, also reinforcing of the circadian rhythm comes from the mother's pineal and basically tells the child or conveys the information to the child where the child is, what season it is, and so forth. So yeah, the pineal does feed into breastfeeding, very much so.
Thank you.
And one other thing, sorry, this kind of tangent, but like in the event that a child undergoes, or a child unfortunately goes through some sort of like head trauma, the child will release certain enzymes or chemical messages in its mouth and saliva that will feed into the nipple and the mammary tissue, and then will feed back up into the brain, and then the brain itself, mainly the pituitary, hypothalamic pituitary axis, will then release certain peptides, I think, and will deliver healing peptides to potentially heal the brain injury or the head injury. So there is that too. And that's actually, that whole mechanism is being looked at for athletes that undergo like head trauma and stuff like that. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I was talking about how, earlier they showed a guy with his nipple showing. And then this, and I had mentioned Curly's NOx formula, which I had gone over with you, grabs the nipple because the baby's supposed to be feeding. And it is my opinion, that may not just all be dicks and demons, but he could have been talking about the nipple. Or it may not all be just titties and cakes in there. There might actually be some science in this shit. I don't know, that's fine.
The thumb too.
Huh?
It's closing the loop. It's closing the loop because you're putting the tip of your thumb on your nipple. The two symbols for the pineal gland are coming together.
Hey. Okay. This is interesting. Nice.
And if their skin is turquoise and not blue, then turquoise is very symbolic, especially in Egypt and across other cultures too. But in Egypt, it's like protection and good fortune. And even
What if I told you? Sorry, Tom.
that was it. You're good. Go.
Sorry. What if I told you turquoise was actually the most magic color?
I can see that.
Yeah, because it's like the diamond thunder color. It's like God at the highest quality color. So you see like this turquoise idea, especially in the Puranas, they're very obsessed with color, and people often attribute it to race or caste. It's actually none of those things. It's actually talking about layers of spiritual purification, alchemical you could even say. So the turquoise color is actually equivalent to both lapis and clear, both quartz and like dark blue. So it's really interesting what you're saying.
Yeah. No, and I it's one of my favorite colors too. I mean, I really love that color. And I don't wear it a lot because it's become like a hipster thing to wear a bunch of turquoise around town. I see these guys like hipsters wear turquoise, and
Really?
that's fine. Here in my I live in a very hipster neighborhood of East Nashville, and these turquoise is hitting strides right now on the streets. But
Well, turquoise
that being said,
never went out of style. Turquoise never went out of style over in Navajo country.
right, that's a
Big
good
old
point.
Navajo. Yeah.
That's
You're
what
right, that's it forever.
yeah, just it's Native Americans for sure.
Going off what Lynn said, I mean, it's the color of the quetzal bird. And Quetzalcoatl, right? Quetzalcoatl, that's where we come with the whole feather serpent. And then also the quetzal bird, whenever it sits at a certain area, the base of one of the, I think it's Chile, of the pyramids in Mexico, you can hear it. It gives off a certain echo, a vibration. But yeah, the quetzal bird has that turquoise color. And it's very, very important, very symbolic, at least to the Mexica, the Aztec people, and the Mayan people as well. And when the whole Virgin Mary thing came about, a lot of people think that she was robed in blue, but that was more of
Hope
a
you have a good night,
European,
ladies.
I guess,
Whatever you do.
misrepresentation. She was actually robed in turquoise because she was trying to give symbology to the Mexica people, which
It's now
they consider
it's
turquoise
almost
to be the
4:50,
symbol
so
of
it's
spirituality.
4:20 somewhere.
What do you think about the Virgin of Guadalupe? I just want to get your opinion. I put it up there.
That's
So Jim and Lisa.
That's the one I saw.
What about the story? story behind it.
I believe it, actually. I know that might be a surprise to people. I think it's a very interesting and profound story of Juan Diego. I know Lisa's done a whole episode, Lisa, Nick, and Teresa, on this, so I don't want to, re-encapsulate anything they've said, but I think it's a beautiful and important spiritual story. And I think it's, sometimes, I know you might disagree, Helvis, and that's totally okay. But I think that sometimes it's okay to subjugate the demon gods and to put them, sort of lock them into that gateway so they can't, affect our worldly reality. So I think it's a beautiful story. I think she subjugated the plague. The roses obviously have an incredible, very universal, magical meaning. It's again the 5 petal rose, Christian rose. And they're an old world rose grown in a garden in the new world. That's very holistic, very significant. It's like planting the seeds of, you could say faith, or you could even say God. You don't have to take it in like a dogmatic Christian way. You could say it's just planting the seeds of God on this world that didn't fully happen in or whatever conception that you have of it. And so it grew up. So we're still in the growing phase. That's how I think. You can think of it differently.
Occult Rejects.
So, Mark, you don't
Jezza
exactly